The stars had never seemed so close until Captain Jake Morrison saw the first alien ship appear on his screens. The year was 2387, and humanity had been reaching for the stars for 3 centuries, but had never found anyone else out there until now. Morrison commanded the exploration vessel UES Discovery, and his crew had been mapping the outer edges of the Proxima Centauri system when the impossible happened. The alien vessel was massive and sleek, with curves that no human engineer would ever design. It appeared suddenly on their long-range sensors like a ghost materializing from the void. Morrison felt his heart race as he stared at the readings that would change everything humanity thought it knew about the universe. His communications officer, Lieutenant Amy Foster, turned to him with wide eyes and said the aliens were trying to make contact. The message came through in perfect English somehow, which should have been the first warning sign, but Morrison was too amazed to think clearly. The alien voice was smooth and calm as it explained they were called the Veilith and they needed help. Morrison contacted Earth immediately, and within hours Admiral Lisa Carter arrived with a small fleet. She was a tough woman who had spent her life preparing for threats to humanity, but even she seemed stunned by this first contact. The Veilith representative explained through their advanced translation technology that they were refugees fleeing from a dying homeworld across the galaxy. The alien ships were beautiful in a way that made human vessels look crude and primitive. There were 12 of them floating in formation like silver dancers against the black of space. The Veilith claimed they only wanted safe passage through human territory to find a new world where they could rebuild their civilization. Admiral Carter was cautious, but humanitarian instincts won out when the aliens showed them images of their supposedly dying world. The pictures showed withered landscapes and empty cities that tugged at human hearts. The Veilith seemed genuinely grateful when Earth offered them supplies and fuel for their journey to wherever they planned to settle. For 3 months, the alien fleet remained in orbit around Mars while diplomats and scientists worked together. The Veilith shared some of their technology in exchange for human hospitality. They gave humanity advances in energy storage and communications that seemed incredible. Everything appeared to be going perfectly, as both species learned about each other. Morrison found himself fascinated by the aliens during the many meetings and exchanges. They looked almost human, but taller and more graceful, with pale skin that seemed to shimmer slightly in artificial light. Their leader spoke of art and philosophy in ways that made them seem wise and peaceful. Morrison began to think that humanity had been blessed to meet such an advanced and benevolent species. But Commander Rick Torres was not convinced, and his suspicions grew stronger each day. Torres was Chief Intelligence Officer for the Colonial Defense Force, and his job was to be paranoid about threats to Earth. He noticed that the Veilith asked too many questions about human population centers and military capabilities for simple refugees who just wanted to pass through. Torres worked closely with Lieutenant Amy Foster and Sergeant Kevin Blake to monitor the alien fleet without being obvious about it. They used passive sensors and careful observation to track what the aliens were really doing. What they found made Torres lose sleep for weeks as he tried to decide if he was being paranoid or if humanity was walking into a trap. The Veilith ships were scanning everything within range, including Earth itself and all the orbital defense platforms. Their scans were subtle and sophisticated, but Torres had the best sensor equipment humanity could build. The aliens were mapping every military installation and population center with precision that went far beyond what refugees would need for safe passage. Dr. Helen Park was the xenobiologist assigned to study tissue samples that the Veilith had provided for medical research. She was brilliant and thorough, and she spent weeks analyzing alien biology to understand how their bodies worked. What she discovered in her laboratory late one night made her hands shake as she realized the implications. The genetic markers and biological evidence told a story that contradicted everything the aliens had claimed about themselves. Their tissue samples showed no signs of radiation damage or environmental stress that would come from living on a dying world. Instead, their biology suggested a species that was healthy and thriving, with no signs of being refugees at all. Park immediately contacted Torres with her findings, and together they presented their evidence to Admiral Carter. The Admiral listened grimly as they explained that the Veilith had been lying about everything from the beginning. They were not refugees fleeing a dying world. but scouts gathering intelligence for some unknown purpose that could not be good for humanity. Carter ordered increased surveillance of the alien fleet, but it was too late because the Valeth had been watching the humans just as carefully. They knew their deception had been discovered, and they were ready to act. The attack came without warning on a Tuesday morning when most of Earth was still sleeping. The alien ships moved with coordinated precision that spoke of careful planning and military training. They targeted the orbital defense platforms first, with weapons that cut through human shields like they were made of paper. The defensive stations exploded in brilliant flashes that could be seen from Earth's surface as humanity's first line of defense died in minutes. Morrison watched in horror from the discovery as 3 major platforms were destroyed along with over 10,000 human lives. The aliens had seemed so peaceful and wise, but now they revealed their true nature as cold killers who had used human compassion against them. The attack was surgical and devastating as the Valeth crippled Earth's defenses before human reinforcements could respond. Admiral Carter rallied the remaining fleet and launched a counterattack, but the aliens were already retreating into deep space. They had accomplished their mission of testing human defenses and gathering intelligence about Earth's capabilities. The Valeth ships vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind wreckage and the knowledge that humanity had been played for fools. The aftermath was chaos as Earth tried to understand what had happened and why. The aliens had seemed genuine in their need for help and their gratitude for human assistance, but it had all been an elaborate deception designed to get close enough to study human weaknesses and plan for something much worse. Torres worked frantically with his team to decode intercepted alien communications as the truth became clear. The Valeth were not alone, and they were not finished with humanity. They were scouts for a much larger force that was somewhere out there in the galaxy, and now they had all the information they needed to plan an invasion that could destroy human civilization. Morrison stared at the wreckage floating in Earth's orbit and felt something change inside himself and probably inside all of humanity. They had learned that the universe was not empty, but it was also not friendly. The stars that had seemed so welcoming now held threats that humanity had never imagined possible. The age of human innocence was over and the age of human determination was about to begin. 2 weeks after the Valeth attack, Earth was still counting its dead and trying to rebuild its shattered orbital defenses. The debate in the government chambers was fierce as President William Hayes argued for diplomatic solutions while Admiral Lisa Carter demanded immediate military action. The president believed the attack might have been a misunderstanding that could be resolved through careful negotiation, but the military leadership saw it as an act of war that required swift retaliation. Commander Rick Torres worked around the clock with his intelligence team to intercept and decode alien communications that might reveal their true intentions. The breakthrough came when cryptographer Susan Wells managed to crack the Valeth encryption using patterns she had discovered in their previous diplomatic messages. What she found in those intercepted transmissions made everyone in the room go silent with horror. The aliens were not just scouts gathering information, but advance agents reporting back to a massive invasion fleet somewhere across the galaxy. Their communications spoke of human defensive capabilities and population centers, with the cold efficiency of military intelligence. The Valeth had been studying humanity like specimens in a laboratory, and now they were preparing to share that information with an armada that could destroy Earth completely. Wells translated message after message that revealed the scope of the threat facing humanity. The main Valeth fleet consisted of hundreds of warships carrying millions of alien soldiers, and they were already traveling toward Earth at sublight speeds. The aliens needed 2 years to bring their full force across the galaxy, which meant humanity had a narrow window to act before facing complete annihilation. Admiral Carter presented this evidence to President Hayes and the Joint Chiefs of Staff in an emergency session that lasted through the night. The implications were clear and terrifying because humanity faced an enemy that had already demonstrated their willingness to use deception and murder to achieve their goals. The president finally agreed that military action was not just justified, but necessary for human survival. Captain Jake Morrison volunteered to lead the first interstellar pursuit mission when Carter asked for someone to command the hunt for the fleeing Valeth scouts. Morrison had seen the alien attack firsthand and watched thousands of his fellow humans die in the space around Earth. He understood that this was not about revenge but about preventing a much larger catastrophe that would end human civilization forever. The newly commissioned warship UES Vengeance became Morrison's flagship for the mission that would take humanity farther from Earth than anyone had ever traveled before. His crew included some of the best officers in the Colonial Defense Force, starting with Pilot Major Danny Cruz, who could fly anything with engines and had nerves of steel under pressure. Weapons Officer Lieutenant Beth Rogers had trained on every gun system in the human arsenal, and Engineer Chief Petty Officer Mike Johnson could keep any ship running, even when it was falling apart around him. Dr. Helen Park joined the mission as xenobiologist and alien technology specialist because her knowledge of Valeth biology and equipment would be crucial for tracking and fighting them. She had discovered their deception in the first place, and now she wanted to use her expertise to help stop them permanently. Park brought with her all the research data from the 3 months of alien contact, including detailed scans of their ships and technology. The human task force consisted of 5 ships equipped with the most advanced weapons and sensors that Earth could provide. They also carried experimental faster-than-light drives that had been reverse-engineered from captured Valeth technology during the brief period of cooperation. The irony was bitter that humanity would use alien science to hunt down the very aliens who had given it to them as part of their deception. Morrison studied the tactical reports and alien ship movements as his fleet prepared to depart from Earth orbit. The Valeth had a head start of 2 weeks, but their ships left traces that human sensors could follow if they moved quickly enough. The chase would take them through star systems that no human had ever seen, and into dangers that no one could predict. But Morrison was determined to catch the aliens before they could report back to their invasion fleet. The pursuit began in the Alpha Centauri system, where long-range sensors detected the lingering energy signatures of alien FTL drives. The Valeth had stopped here briefly to make repairs or gather supplies before continuing their journey toward whatever destination awaited them. Morrison ordered his ships to scan every asteroid and moon for clues about where the aliens might be heading next. Chief Petty Officer Johnson worked with Dr. Park to analyze the alien technology they had captured during the attack on Earth. They discovered that Valeth ships used a unique form of quantum tunneling for faster-than-light travel that left distinctive traces in subspace. These traces faded quickly, but lasted long enough for human sensors to follow if they stayed close enough to the alien trail. The chase led the human fleet through 3 star systems over the course of 6 weeks, with Morrison always arriving hours or days after the Valeth had departed. Each time they found evidence of the alien presence, including waste heat signatures and quantum residue from their drives. The aliens were moving quickly, but they were not trying to hide their trail, which suggested they did not believe humans could follow them across interstellar distances. Lieutenant Rogers used the time between star systems to modify the ships' weapons based on Dr. Park's research into Valeth biology and technology. Park had discovered that the aliens had a fatal vulnerability to specific electromagnetic frequencies that could disrupt their nervous systems and shut down their equipment. Rogers worked to tune the ship's energy weapons to exploit this weakness. When they finally caught up to their quarry, the breakthrough came in the Kepler 442 system, when the human fleet detected active alien ships instead of just the cold traces they had been following. 2 Valeth vessels were in orbit around the 4th planet, apparently conducting some kind of survey or resource-gathering operation. They had not expected to be followed and were caught completely off guard when 5 human warships dropped out of hyperspace and immediately opened fire. Morrison felt a grim satisfaction as he watched the first alien ship explode under the concentrated fire of human weapons tuned to exploit their biological weaknesses. The second alien vessel tried to escape, but Lieutenant Rogers had anticipated their move and caught them with a perfectly aimed shot that crippled their engines. The Valeth ship drifted helplessly in space as human Marines prepared to board and capture any survivors. The battle lasted only minutes, but it marked the first time in galactic history that humans had hunted down and destroyed alien ships in interstellar space. Morrison stood on the bridge of the Vengeance and watched the wreckage of 2 enemy vessels floating against the stars. This was just the beginning, because somewhere out there, a massive alien fleet was still coming toward Earth, and humanity would have to hunt them down too before they could complete their invasion plans. The captured Valeth commander looked almost human, except for the pale shimmer of his skin and the cold hatred in his dark eyes. Captain Morrison stood in the interrogation room aboard the UES Vengeance, watching Dr. Helen Park work with careful precision to break through the aliens' mental defenses. The prisoner had been silent for 3 days, but Park had developed techniques based on her study of Valeth biology that could make even the most stubborn alien talk. When the commander finally spoke, his words chilled everyone in the room to their bones. The main Valeth armada consisted of over 300 warships carrying enough firepower to turn Earth into a dead rock floating in space. The invasion fleet was already traveling toward human space at sublight speeds and would arrive in less than 18 months, even without the intelligence that the scout ships had been meant to provide. Morrison realized with growing horror that destroying the scout fleet had only bought Earth a few extra months of safety. The real threat was still coming, and now the aliens knew that humans were capable of following them across the galaxy and destroying their ships. The element of surprise that had helped humanity win the first battle was gone, and the Valeth would be ready for them next time. Commander Rick Torres analyzed the intelligence from the captured alien and concluded that conventional defense would be impossible against such overwhelming numbers. Earth's entire space navy consisted of less than 50 ships, while the Valeth were bringing 6 times that many warships equipped with technology that was generations ahead of anything humans had built. A defensive battle around Earth would be over in hours, with human civilization destroyed completely. Admiral Lisa Carter made the decision that would define humanity's future when she authorized Operation Deep Strike during an emergency meeting with Earth's military leadership. Instead of waiting for the aliens to arrive at Earth, the entire human space navy would pursue the Valeth armada across the galaxy and destroy them before they could threaten humanity's homeworld. It was a desperate gamble that would send every available warship thousands of light years from home with no guarantee they would ever return. Morrison was promoted to Commodore and given command of the largest military expedition in human history. His flagship, the UES Retribution, led a fleet of 42 ships carrying the best crews and most advanced weapons that Earth could provide. Every ship was equipped with experimental FTL drives and enough supplies for a campaign that might last years, depending on how far they had to chase the alien fleet across the galaxy. Captain Rachel West commanded the heavy cruiser UES Defiance and brought with her 20 years of combat experience that made her one of the most respected officers in the fleet. Captain Steve Mason led the battleship UES Relentless with a crew that had trained together for so long they could fight their ship with perfect coordination, even in the chaos of battle. These veteran officers formed the core of Morrison's command structure as they prepared for the longest hunt in human history. The journey across the galaxy tested every human in the fleet as they traveled farther from Earth than any person had ever gone before. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Carol Brooks dealt with increasing mental health problems as crew members struggled with the isolation and stress of being so far from home. Some sailors requested to be put in suspended animation rather than face the psychological pressure of the endless voyage through alien space. Navigator Lieutenant Commander Paul Richards used captured Valeth star charts to plot their course through regions of the galaxy that appeared on no human maps. The alien charts showed star systems and stellar phenomena that human astronomers had never observed, and Richards had to constantly recalculate their route as they encountered gravitational anomalies and stellar debris that could destroy a ship if approached carelessly. Communications Officer Lieutenant Maria Santos worked around the clock to intercept alien transmissions that might reveal the location and intentions of the Valeth fleet. Her efforts paid off when she detected a series of long-range messages between the invasion armada and their homeworld discussing supply routes and staging areas for the planned attack on Earth. The messages gave Morrison enough information to predict where the aliens would travel next. 6 months into their pursuit, the human fleet finally reached the edge of Valeth space and discovered that their quarry had been expecting them all along. Long-range sensors detected a massive defensive perimeter around the alien homeworld consisting of orbital weapons platforms and a fleet of over 500 warships. The Valeth had used the time during the human pursuit to prepare for a battle that would determine the fate of both civilizations. Morrison studied the tactical situation and realized that a direct assault would be suicide, even with all the ships Earth had sent on this mission. The aliens outnumbered them more than 10 to 1 and were fighting in their own territory with all the advantages that provided. But Morrison had not come this far to turn back, and he began developing a strategy that would use human cunning and determination to overcome impossible odds. Dr. Park continued her research during the long voyage and made a breakthrough that could change everything about the coming battle. She had been studying captured Valith computer systems and discovered a way to create a virus-like program that could infect their networks and cause massive system failures. The cyber weapon would need to be deployed at close range, but it could cripple entire sections of the alien fleet if used correctly. Chief Petty Officer Mike Johnson worked with Park to develop delivery systems for the cyber weapon, while Lieutenant Beth Rogers planned targeting solutions for the human fleet's conventional weapons. Every advantage would be needed in the battle that was coming, because the Valith had shown they would fight to the death rather than allow humans to threaten their homeworld. The alien defensive perimeter extended for millions of kilometers around, their star system with overlapping fields of fire that could destroy any ship foolish enough to approach directly. Morrison realized he would need to divide his forces and attack from multiple directions simultaneously to have any chance of success. The plan was risky and would likely cost many human lives, but it was the only way to penetrate the alien defenses and strike at the heart of their civilization. Morrison addressed his fleet commanders over the communication system and explained the battle plan that would either save Earth or destroy the human space navy in the attempt. Every captain and crew member understood that they were about to fight the most important battle in human history against an enemy that had already proven their willingness to commit genocide. The fate of every person on Earth depended on what happened in the next few days as humanity prepared to assault the Valith homeworld. The Valith homeworld hung before them like a blue and silver jewel surrounded by the most massive defensive network that Commodore Morrison had ever seen. Over 500 alien warships formed a protective sphere around their planet, while orbital weapons platforms created overlapping fields of destruction that could vaporize any approaching vessel. Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution and studied the tactical display, knowing that a direct assault would be the end of the human fleet and probably the end of Earth as well. Chief Tactical Officer Commander Lisa Morgan worked with Intelligence Specialist Major Pete Collins to analyze the alien defensive positions and find weaknesses that human forces could exploit. The Valith had positioned their ships to create maximum coverage, but that also meant they were spread thin across a huge volume of space. If the humans could force them to concentrate their forces in one area, it might create openings elsewhere that could be exploited. Morrison developed a three-part battle plan that would require perfect timing and coordination between his ship commanders. Captain Rachel West would lead the first group, consisting of 12 ships, in a direct assault on the outer defensive perimeter to draw the alien fleet toward her position. The attack would appear to be the main human assault and would hopefully convince the Valith to commit most of their forces to stopping it. Captain Steve Mason would command the second group of 15 ships in an attack on the orbital shipyards, where new Valith vessels were being constructed. The shipyards were heavily defended, but destroying them would prevent the aliens from building replacements for any ships lost in the battle. More importantly, the attack would force the Valith to divide their attention between multiple threats. Morrison himself would lead the third group, consisting of the remaining human ships, on the most dangerous mission of all. They would use the distraction created by the other two attacks to penetrate the inner defensive ring and target the planetary command center, where the Valith leadership controlled their entire war effort. If they could destroy or capture the command center, the alien fleet might be paralyzed long enough for humanity to win the battle. Dr. Helen Park had worked for months to perfect the cyber weapon that could infect Valith computer systems and cause their ships to malfunction or shut down completely. Computer specialist Sergeant Alan Price had helped her create delivery systems that could spread the virus through the alien communication networks once it was introduced into their systems. The weapon would only work at close range, but it could potentially cripple large sections of the enemy fleet. The battle began at dawn on the alien world when Captain West led her ships in a frontal assault on the outer defensive line. The UES Defiance fired everything it had at the nearest Valith platform, while 11 other human ships spread out to engage multiple targets simultaneously. The alien response was immediate and overwhelming as hundreds of energy beams reached out to destroy the attacking human vessels. West's ship took hit after hit, but kept firing as her crew fought to stay alive under the devastating alien counterattack. 3 human ships exploded in the first 5 minutes of combat, but the survivors pressed their attack with the desperate courage of people who knew that failure meant the end of their civilization. The Valeth fleet began moving toward West's position exactly as Morrison had hoped they would. Captain Mason launched his attack on the shipyards while the alien attention was focused on West's assault. The UES Relentless led 14 other ships in a high-speed run past the defensive platforms toward the massive orbital construction facilities where dozens of new Valeth warships were being built. Mason's gunners opened fire on the shipyards with everything they had while alien defenders scrambled to respond to this unexpected threat. The shipyards erupted in brilliant explosions as human weapons found their targets among the construction equipment and partially completed alien vessels. Mason's attack was succeeding, but it was drawing more and more Valeth ships away from the main defensive line as the aliens tried to protect their vital industrial facilities from further damage. Morrison saw his chance and led the third group of human ships toward the planet itself, while the alien fleet was distracted by the 2 diversionary attacks. The UES Retribution and her escorts accelerated toward the inner defensive ring at maximum speed, while Sergeant Price prepared to deploy Dr. Park's cyber weapon against any alien ships they encountered. The inner defenses were lighter than expected, because most of the Valeth fleet had moved to counter the attacks on the outer perimeter and the shipyards. Morrison's ships fought their way through 3 waves of alien defenders, while Price successfully deployed the cyber virus into several enemy vessels. The infected ships began losing power and maneuverability as their computer systems crashed under the assault of the human-designed program. But the victory was coming at a terrible cost as human ships exploded under alien fire throughout the battle zone. Morrison watched in horror as the UES Defiance took a direct hit from a Valeth heavy weapon and broke apart with Captain West and her entire crew still aboard. The loss of such an experienced commander and her ship was devastating, but there was no time to mourn as the battle continued to rage. The cyber weapon was spreading through the alien fleet faster than expected, as infected ships passed the virus to others through their communication links. Entire squadrons of Valeth vessels found themselves dead in space as their systems shut down or began operating erratically. The aliens had never faced anything like this digital assault, and their responses were confused and ineffective. Morrison's strike force reached the planet's outer atmosphere, where the main command center was located in a massive orbital station that controlled the entire Valeth war effort. The station was protected by its own defensive systems, but most of the mobile fleet was too far away to provide immediate support. This was humanity's chance to end the threat permanently by cutting off the head of the alien military machine. The assault on the command center would determine the fate of both civilizations as human Marines prepared to board the alien station and fight their way to the control rooms where the Valeth leadership was coordinating their defense. Morrison knew that everything depended on the next few hours as his ships closed in on their final target, while the battle for the alien homeworld reached its climax around them. The Valeth command station was a massive structure that gleamed like silver against the backdrop of their homeworld, as Commodore Morrison led his assault team through the docking bay they had blasted open with concentrated fire. Sergeant Kevin Blake and Lieutenant Beth Rogers flanked him, while Dr. Helen Park carried the equipment needed to complete their cyber attack on the alien command systems. The station's corridors were filled with emergency lighting and the sounds of battle, as human Marines fought their way deeper into the heart of the enemy stronghold. Morrison had lost half his fleet getting this far, but the sacrifice was worth it if they could end the threat to Earth permanently. The remaining human ships in orbit continued their battle against the crippled Valeth fleet, while Morrison's team fought through waves of alien defenders inside the command center. The electromagnetic weapons that Dr. Park had designed proved devastatingly effective against the Valeth nervous system, and their defenders fell quickly under the human assault. The alien corridors were designed for beings taller than humans, which made movement awkward, but also provided cover during firefights with the remaining Valeth soldiers. Morrison's team moved methodically through each section, clearing resistance and advancing toward the central command chamber, where the alien leadership was coordinating what remained of their defense. The cyber virus had spread throughout their fleet, but the command center's systems were isolated and still functioning. Dr. Park worked frantically to access alien computer terminals as they advanced through the station, trying to find a way to spread the virus into the command centers, protected networks. Each terminal she cracked gave her more information about Valith military structure and the location of their high command. The aliens had been planning their invasion of Earth for over 50 years, and their files contained detailed intelligence about human civilization that made Morrison's blood run cold. The final battle took place in the massive central chamber where the Valith High Council had gathered to make their last stand against the human invaders. The alien leaders were ancient beings who had lived for centuries and had been directing their species' expansion across the galaxy for longer than human civilization had existed. They stood behind energy barriers wearing ceremonial armor that marked them as the supreme rulers of their entire race. Morrison faced the Valith Supreme Leader across the command chamber, while his team secured the control systems, and Dr. Park began uploading the final version of her cyber weapon into the alien networks. The Supreme Leader spoke in perfect English, telling Morrison that the humans had made a terrible mistake by coming here, and that other species in the galaxy would see them as a threat after this display of ruthless aggression. The alien leader offered to call off the invasion of Earth in exchange for human mercy and safe passage for what remained of the Valith fleet. He claimed that his people were only trying to find new worlds to colonize, and that the attack on Earth had been a misunderstanding caused by overcautious military commanders who acted without proper authorization from the civilian government. Morrison listened to the aliens' words and remembered the 10,000 humans who had died in the first attack, and the thousands more who had sacrificed their lives during the pursuit across the galaxy. He thought about Captain Rachel West and her crew, who had died fighting to protect Earth, and all the other brave men and women who would never see their home again because of Valith treachery and lies. The human commander rejected any compromise, with words that would echo through galactic history for centuries to come. He told the Supreme Leader that humanity would not allow any threat to Earth to survive anywhere in the galaxy, and that the Valith had forfeited their right to mercy when they chose deception and murder over honest first contact. The age of human innocence was over, and the galaxy would learn that Earth's children could be as ruthless as any species when their survival was at stake. The final confrontation was brief but decisive, as Morrison faced the Supreme Leader in single combat while his team completed their mission to destroy the alien command systems. The Valith leader was skilled and dangerous, but human determination and superior tactics won the day as Morrison proved that individual courage could triumph over ancient arrogance and assumed superiority. Dr. Park's cyber weapon spread through the remaining Valith networks like wildfire, destroying their communication systems and disabling what was left of their fleet. The virus would continue spreading through Valith space for months, shutting down their technology and leaving their civilization crippled and defenseless. Any aliens who survived would spend generations rebuilding what humanity had destroyed in a matter of hours. The human fleet began its long journey home with only 15 ships remaining from the 42 that had left Earth orbit almost a year earlier. Morrison stood on the bridge of the damaged UES Retribution and watched the Valith homeworld fall behind them as they entered hyperspace for the voyage back to human space. Earth was safe, but the cost had been enormous, and humanity had learned that survival in the galaxy required a willingness to be as merciless as any predator. Captain Steve Mason aboard the UES, Relentless, reported that his engineers had recovered enough alien technology to keep humanity ahead of any future threats, while Dr. Park confirmed that the cyber virus would continue spreading through Valith space, making it impossible for them to rebuild their military capacity for decades or maybe centuries. The threat to Earth was ended, but the implications of what humanity had accomplished would reshape galactic politics forever. Morrison reflected on what his species had become during the long voyage home as Earth grew larger in their view screens after months of travel through the void. Humanity had started as peaceful explorers seeking knowledge and friendship among the stars, but the Valith attack had transformed them into apex predators who would hunt their enemies across the galaxy and show no mercy to those who threatened their world. The final scene showed the surviving human ships entering Earth orbit, where Admiral Lisa Carter and the entire Colonial Defense Force waited to welcome home the heroes who had saved their civilization. The aliens had tried to flee after their failed attack, but they learned too late that humans would pursue any threat to Earth no matter how far they had to travel or how long the hunt might take. Earth's children had claimed their place among the stars through fire and blood, and the galaxy would never be the same. The message was clear to any species that might threaten humanity in the future, because the age of human dominance had begun, and it would last as long as the stars themselves burned in the darkness of space.